everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my Spider-Man stoneware mug today. I love it. I just adjusted the angle a little bit because I thought it was maybe too low, but let's just get into today's video. So today's video is going to be my September reading wrap-up. So the first book that I read was Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. With all of these books in this series so far, I have been pretty shocked at how much I've liked them. Like, this was really fun. It was fun to listen to, easy to listen to. I liked this one more than The Love Hypothesis because this one is more neuroscience, and also there was like Star Wars mentions and stuff like that. I really liked the main character because she was more alt looking, and I've heard people say that the plot was like exactly the same as The Love Hypothesis, which I don't think is true, but I can see that there's a lot of similarities, but I liked this one a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars. I liked this one. I think I liked this one more because I really liked both of the main characters, and the side characters were pretty fun too. I also, like I said, liked the focus on being on neuroscience, and other than that, it's just kind of what you would expect. It's a cute little contemporary romance in the STEM field. The ending was kind of bizarre of who the like villain character is, but overall I liked this one a lot more. This one's also set in NASA, so you get more focus on space a little bit, even though it's the neuroscience side of like the astronaut suits. Still really cool, still very feministic, and seeing how like women can get a bad rap in STEM fields, or masculine dominated fields, and how we kind of deal with crap with that. But really liked this. I will continue the series, and I'm probably gonna read other things Ali Hazelwood writes because I've been pleasantly surprised, and this is not my genre. I heard she's coming out with like a paranormal romance, so I might read that because that is more my genre. But yeah, I understand the hype for these, and I've really enjoyed this one, so it was good. Next one I was able to read because I had heard people raving about it was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and everyone's right. I loved this book. It is worth the hype. It is kind of strange because I'm a big fantasy person, and while I guess you could argue that this is a fantasy world, it's more of just like a normal world set in like a World War II type of an era and feel, and there's like people are writing newspapers, stuff like that. But the fantastic elements come from there being like these gods that are in a war, and those elements come out. And like I said, this book was very different. It was different than anything else I've read, which I think made it more enjoyable for me because it was kind of fresh. And like I said, it was like a World War II type of a book. It's the right timeline, culture, etc. Think like typewriters and cars, but still old school. But it's also fantasy with those fantastical elements. I loved that they mixed those two. The magic is not really explained, but there are like houses in this world that have been like magicked to light candles on command or have security. So there are like elements of magic, but it's not delved into a lot or very explained. But people do seem to have magical abilities, and it comes from the gods who were thought to be dead, but they've now resurfaced, and two of them are at war, and the people fight on either side of this war. So they're like drafted into the war to fight for one of the gods, which was really interesting. And the war elements were actually really cool, and I think that's where more of the fantastic elements come in, because there were like wyverns dropping bombs, and that was like the bombings instead of planes, jets, whatever. There were like hounds, like hellhound type things, storming the towns at night, so you had to be in at a certain time or the hounds could get you. Really cool elements like that, and I think it was a really interesting twist to kind of the World War type story. I really loved how unique this book was. It is a duology, I believe, so hopefully the story will be wrapped up soon. I think the next book comes out in November, so anxious to see what happens. My husband also read this book alongside me, and usually he has a lot of issues if the magic isn't well explained or he's not really comprehensive of the world and the magic system, but he didn't really have that problem. We both thought it was very good, very enjoyable. The pain, however, is from where the story ends and that horrible cliffhanger. It was not fun, but it is very good, and it will absolutely drive you to the next book. So I gave this 5 stars. I loved it. I was a little bit surprised how much I loved it because, again, it's not like a high fantasy, but it was just so cool. Yeah, believe the people that are hyping this book up. I believe in it now. I will read book 2 next month if possible. I will give a little caveat here that Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan, I guess I can flash up the cover. Here it is. I DNF'd this. I got like, I don't think 20% in, probably less than 20% in, and I just wasn't feeling it. I like couldn't focus. I was trying to listen to it. I like couldn't focus, couldn't track the story. And John was having the same problem I was. We were on a road trip together at the time, so I don't think it was just me, but it could have just been us. I don't know. But I like just couldn't get into it, and I DNF'd it for that reason. I may come back to it, or probably come back to it, but not right now, so I am DNFing this. That was on my 23 for 2023 challenge, but is the only book I've DNF'd so far. But I just wasn't feeling it. The next book that I did read was Foxglove by Adeline Grace, however, and while I really liked this book, I loved the drama and the rivalry between fate and death. I loved getting more into Cigna's story and her cousin Blythe, now that Blythe is in a different situation than she was in the first book. I'm not gonna lie though, I was a little disappointed at how it resolved in the end, because the whole point is that you're introduced to Fate as a character, and they have this like sibling rivalry kind of a thing of these immortal beings. And the ending that was resolved, I was kind of hoping for more drama, to be honest, which is kind of funny. I was hoping that the situation that was resolved, I was hoping it wouldn't be resolved, that Cigna would have to go through with it, and then we would try to resolve that in the next book. But that's not what happens. It is resolved. And it sounds like you're going to get 2 different characters' perspectives in the next story, which I think will be done well, but wasn't what I was hoping for. I am curious to see how they continue the story with Fate in the next book. But overall, I liked it. This was creepy. Did I like it as much as the first one? I'm not sure. I think I liked this one a lot because of the introduction of Fate. I don't know. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. I will continue. I'm excited to wrap up this trilogy and see what happens in the story. Next one I read was Never a Hero by Vanessa Lynn. I read Only a Monster, I think last January, and not this past January, but the one before that. And I really liked Only a Monster. This one, honestly, I was pretty disappointed in this one, and it kind of fell flat for me. I think some of it is middle book syndrome. I just really didn't vibe with this. I felt like when you start this book, you're not really picking up from the second story. Like, you are a little bit, but it felt like this was the start of another book instead of a sequel. It felt like it was establishing an entirely different story and book, which makes sense because a lot of this is time traveling and the magic system revolves around that. But it felt like you were just starting a whole separate book with like a tiny bit of information from the first one. I know that some of that is due to the travel timeline in the book, in the series, the things like that in the series, but I wasn't very invested in the story. I didn't like how it went, and I felt like it was just second book syndrome, that it was just all build up to propel you into the third book. I was kind of sad about it, actually, because I was really looking forward to it, and then I didn't really like it. I'm hoping that they can redeem themselves in the book 3, and that book 3 is better, and we kind of see what's going to happen. But I think a big piece of this was, for me, was that I thought one of the characters was gone. Like, I thought they died in the first book, and they're not. And that was weird. I don't know, I just had a weird time with it. I didn't really enjoy it. I will continue because I would like to know what happens, and I hope that book 3 is better, because I really liked book 1. But this one just kind of fell flat for me, and it was okay. I give it 2.5 stars. And then I read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This was on my 23 for 2023 challenge. I did this book. I did really like this book. I really loved the first half of the book with the magical school and the military and her like beating the odds, like going against the odds and succeeding against all odds, to get into the military academy and stuff like that, and thought it was really interesting and an underdog story, and I really liked that, especially set in this like magical military academy. However, I am not the biggest fan of drug use being like the conduit for the use of the magic system via the gods. So you can like channel the gods through taking poppy seeds through the drugs to then channel the gods' abilities, invite them to help you, and then you can use their abilities if they agree to help. It was different. I just don't really like that. I just didn't like that. Like, it's fine if you do, it's fine if you didn't. But for me, I just really didn't care for that aspect of it. Also heard, and it's different, it's a fine way to use a magic system. I'm just not the biggest fan of that. I've also heard that this was dark, like, oh, it's a really dark book, she's a morally great character, Ren, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I like dark. I can handle stuff like that. I like morally great characters. This was like truly dark. Dark, because it's war. And when they start describing warfare and horrible people, which, you know, these things happened in history, like these horrible things that happened to these people in this book, they happened in war. But it was like, when they were describing things like killing infants and detailed accounts of raping women, I got a little sick. Like, I can handle a lot of things, but sexual assault is a big trigger for me. It like really upsets me. And so when they go into that and like killing infants in like really horrible graphic ways, that made me a little sick. I can't really handle that. And so it was hard for me to get through the last half of the book. And granted, these things are happening to Ren's side that's fighting against this. This is happening to Ren's side of the military. But it made it really hard for me to get through the last half of the book. Overall, it's good and unique, but after I finish this, I just kind of needed a break. And I'm gonna need a break and to space out this trilogy a lot if that's what you're getting yourself into. So I will probably finish it, but not now. And I'm glad I read it. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but it was okay. I'll see how it goes. I did give it 3 stars, mostly because I was a little traumatized. The next one I read that I, for the life of me, cannot find my book at the moment, but it was Dance with a Fae Prince by Elise Kova. This is book 2 in the Married to Magic series. I am still planning on reading this series and continuing it. This book was fine. Easy to read, okay story. I feel like all of these are kind of just like fluffy little stories, fluffy little cozy fantasies almost. I guess they're not, in the sense that there's like usually some sort of betrayal or battle or something that will occur. For the most part, I feel like they're almost just kind of like cozy romance fantasies. And it's not bad, but it's not amazing. And it's kind of one of those things that I feel like it's just nice to listen to as like a palate cleanser, to just go through when you want something light and fluffy and to just have like this cute little thing. But they're not the best things you've ever read, but they're comforting. So I like it. I'll continue the series, but it's not mind-blowing. It's not life-altering. I gave it 3 stars. I just got Duet with the Siren Duke from Fae Crate in, and I know I had the Duel with the Vampire Lord or something. Maybe I'll find one that I really like, but these were just fine. Nothing bad, nothing amazing. And then I'm going to include this because even though I finished it October 1st, I basically had it finished except for a tiny little bit the last day of September, and I'm just gonna throw it in here while we're doing this. So I was able to read We Could Be Villains by Megan McClough, and I loved this book. I knew I would because the description of this book was just so fun. So I knew it would absolutely be my cup of tea when I found out about it and picked it up, and I loved it. It's in a world where it's basically like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, fan base and all, except that it's all real, and they use movies as a cover-up to make people believe it's fake. So they'll like have an incident and they'll be like, oh, that was just a publicity stunt for our new movie. So people think it wasn't real. And I thought that was like a really interesting dynamic and a really interesting story to create. So that's kind of where the world you're in. And then the supervillain blackmails a fangirl into helping him, or he says he will kill her family. Nefarious plots ensue. I loved that idea, and so when I picked up this book, I was very excited about it. Thought, unless this goes horribly awry, how could I not love it? I must love it. And I did. I love it so much. There were parts that I would have preferred to go another direction, but it was just so fun. The book was so fun. And I think you can tell that this is the author's first book, and there's some parts of the writing that were a little cheesy. And I'm not even saying that as like a critique or a bad thing, because it is a superhero book. So I think the dialogue and the things that are said should be cheesy at times, because that's just like the comic book Marvel culture. But also some of the things were like skipped for time's sake that could have added to the story. It also could have taken away from the story and just slowed things down, so I understand why they were cut. Some of the things were resolved or changed too quickly, I thought. But again, like, I think that's hard to do when you're writing, to be like, do we describe this whole thing and why, or do we just make it a story? So I understand the decisions behind that, but some of the things may have been resolved too quickly or changed too fast. Not a bad thing, just a tiny bit of a critique. Didn't really take away from my enjoyment of the book. All that being said, there will be a book 2, she told me, and I will read it. Oh, I loved it. I just love superhero books, and so this was very fun, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and I'm planning on doing a review. We'll see if I can get that up, and I'm planning on doing a review of this book. But those are all of the books that I was able to read in September. It was a pretty good reading month overall, and now I've been launched into my October reading. It's kind of crazy that the end of the year is coming so fast. It's going to be here literally so soon, because the holidays are going to start hitting, and then time is just going to disappear. Say hi. I'm just going to have to do my outro with him on my lap, but so things are wrapping up very fast, which is crazy. Let me know if you have read any of these books or any of your opinions. But as for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye. So I'm on my way to get a tattoo right now, the tattoo that I've talked about on my channel a little bit. It's gonna be a little bit hard for me to film everything, but I'm gonna try to get some clips here and there, but here we go. Well, it is done. Sorry I couldn't really get video in the midst of everything. I did put a couple, I'm gonna have a couple anyway, videos up on my TikTok of a little bit of just me walking in and stuff, but the process you can't really film, especially without the artist's permission, but. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to show at an angle, but this is my tattoo. I think it looks amazing. Obviously it's still healing, so it might look a little bit crusty, a little weird, but there she is. She's beautiful.